David and I have been friends for quite a while now, and we met through spirituality. And you know, I have witnessed so many people be changed by his astrology. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, I've been around the country with him before. I've interviewed a lot of great people and great stories about how he's affected them. And it is just truly an honor to know him and to be his friend. And I would like to introduce the amazing David Palmer.
I have 2 open sprites, if anybody didn't notice. How are we now? Well, everybody, welcome to, I was going to say welcome to Denver, but I should say welcome to myself to Denver. But thank you so much for coming out. It means the world to me because I just sit in some crazy little studio with a camera on and just talk about astrology. So the fact that you guys are here means a lot to me, that astrology is much more bigger than any astrologer. You know, it's all about what we all see it as. We all have our own individual journey, and I was with Dwight. Where's Dwight? He's here. I never knew him before, but we had a cool convo outside, and I was talking about we all have our own journey. And I think that's important to remember when it comes to astrology, because even though, yes, the collective energy is going through so much, and I preach the collective consciousness a lot, but there is no one way to live your journey. And I think that with spirituality today and the way that things are going in spirituality, that scares me about how it's kind of like, you've got to live this way only. And I think that humanity and the age of Aquarius and all this stuff we talk about in spirituality is it's about the individuality. And I think that we have to remember that and ground in that uniqueness of ourselves. And find a way to, of course, combine that force with the collective, but the kind of naysaying of, well, they live that way or you live that way, I think is the cause of what the disharmony on this planet is. And so one of the things that I want people to know about and how I do my presentations or how I do astrology or when I'm looking at the camera and I'm speaking to you is there's never any judgment of who you are or how you deal with it. Because trust me, I'm the first person in the book that I say what to do in the astrology and I don't do it, you know what I mean? So I think that's super important to remember that we're all so unique, because the more and more that I do this every day and I follow astrology and I get deeper and I do individual readings, or whether I do, I don't know, presentations or anything, wherever I've gone, the spiritual community is getting really, it's turning into the new Christianity, I guess you could say. And I've done a lot of big reports about this, or if you guys watch my big Age of Deception video, that scares me the most, is that whenever we change ages, there always seems to be this new spiritual well that comes up. But in that well tends to be people who start to say, hey, I know the best way to do this. And then they get together with other people who think that, yeah, well, you're right, we have the best way to do this. And then they create this kind of collective thing of, this is the way it should be. And then eventually a couple of 100 years come by, and then maybe there'll be a book that'll be popping out soon about the new age spiritual way to live. Probably not during our time, but who knows in the next couple of years, especially with where the ages are going. So I don't know why I got brought up to talk about that at first, but because Dwight and I just had that convo, that was what Spirit wanted me to talk about before we go into today's presentation, is you and your vibe is everything. And your path, even if it looks like a crazy fucking roller coaster, I bet you that's better than the straight and narrow line that is worried about how everybody wants you to be, how you think you should be. You know, like every day I think when I'm in the showers, when I do my prayer to God, and I always put really cold water on me. I'm not saying that you guys have to do this either, because like my wife, like she doesn't like cold showers, you know? Hers is on extra hot. Mine goes to super cold, and I'm like freezing, going, okay, God, please forgive me for all that shit I did yesterday, and I really want a good day today, and protect me, make sure everything's okay. And then everything's really cold, you know, so I'm not really in my most manly energy anyway from that. So I start off the day not in full manly mode. So the reason why I came to Denver, or actually the reason why I'm coming to all these different cities, is I wanted to do something different on this tour. I wanted to do a theme for each city, because there's so many things in astrology, and I don't want everybody to feel like I'm putting out the same message to every tour, if that makes sense. And I want to individualize everyone. And for some reason, when I was thinking about, okay, so what am I going to do for each city? And whenever you start at the first town, it should be like the one thing that I think is on everybody's soul: relationships. And the reason why I picked relationships is because my idea of 2018 as a whole is about relationships, period. There's a lot of other stuff going on with governments and shifting of our reality and changing our self-worth and all these big things, and the structure of our lives and how we live our life, and of course spirituality. But the biggest thing that I see in the astrology is relationships. And if I go back and I look, especially over this like 6 to 7 years, I think you can put in that relationships have been a really weird place. Whether that's your romantic, whether that's your best friend, whether that's the weirdo that fired you, whatever it is, relationships have been the weirdest spiritual test of our... I would say it's the most inconsistent thing that's been going on spiritually. And I say that because if we look at the astrology and we look at what's been going on, there's been a lot of dramatic shifts since 2012. Mainly we talked, if you watch my astrology, a lot about Scorpio vibration. And Scorpio vibration, of course, is intimacy. It's deep connection. Of course, it's finding your own inner shadow. But that intimate connection, that drive to connect to somebody on a deep emotional level and feel like, are you there all the way with me? Like all the way? That has been it's kind of like construction. Whenever I see a bunch of planets come into a sign, it's like, okay, the construction workers are here. And it's like, fuck, man. I just wanted to walk in there and like order and get out. I didn't want to have to like deal with the guy with the hard hat and, you know, go the bathroom's closed. I got to go pee. Like, relationships and sex and intimacy and commitment have been the worst construction zones in the zodiac for the whole entire 2010s. The worst. Let's just take a little moment down memory lane. We come into 2009. Do you guys remember 2009? Obama's been president for a year. The car industry's been demolished. Unemployment is at its highest, and I remember getting those Obama checks like they were awesome. But that was a very weird moment coming into 2010 because Saturn had just entered into Libra, but did one of those weird things like planets do, just like how Uranus entered into Taurus this week, where it just shows up for a little bit and then it says, fuck you, I'm going back over there. So in 2009, Saturn enters into Libra, and we all start to go, oh, yeah, relationships, yeah. What is going to be happening here? 2010 comes, and Saturn officially enters in and goes, yes, I'm in here. It's not until 2011 when things get weird. The planet Uranus decides to join in to the party and goes, I'm coming into Aries, the opposite sign, and I'm going to start to oppose Saturn. That's the marker point. And the reason why I bring up 2010 and 2011 is because this year, in October and November, the planet Venus is going to go retrograde in the exact same sign that it went retrograde in 2010. Do you guys all remember November 2010 in your life? I'll give you guys a second to remember it for a second. Start weeding through those weird things. Oh yeah, in July I did this, and then da-da-da-da-da-da. But when it comes to relationships, That was the marker point and the start of what we all thought was going to be, I think, very grand, but turned out to be a very ugly Medusa, green pea soup all over the relationship world. Bah! Which Scorpio has a tendency to do once in a while, if you know him. Once in a while, the green pea soup comes out. But it's good, because it's a good release, And at least you've got a couple hours if you're watching the, demonic person sitting in a bed that they're not going to throw up on you for another 2 hours. So we're getting this transit again this year, but why is that so significant? Sure, if you're an astrologer in here, you're probably going, okay, yeah, every 8 years Venus retrogrades in the same area in which it did, which creates that star, if you ever know. So every 8 years, Venus will retrograde in a zone to where it's predictable to know. And why is this important? Well, let's see what's happened within this last 8 years. Holy Mother of God. Everything from the Pluto-Uranus square, which was what happened during the stock market crash of the 1920s. Saturn coming into Scorpio, where there was eclipses there in Scorpio. The North Node had come into Scorpio. There was a major solar eclipse on October 23rd, 2014 with the Sun and Venus that were dead conjunct. Do you guys all remember that, with the moon at 0 degrees Scorpio? Which, by the way, why is that so important? Well, this is exactly where Venus is going to retrograde. Other things to note, as we're here in 2018, what planet is in Scorpio right now? Jupiter. Well, guess what? All that shit that's been going on for the last 6 years, it's all trying to get swept under the rug by Jupiter and say it's all okay. So the good news in all this is you have made it to the end of your relationship crazy story, but you've got a couple more months left. It's not over, because when we come into October, Venus will start to retrograde in Scorpio. And trust me, there's a lot more to this, but I'm just kind of building it up for y'all. And when it does go retrograde in Scorpio, it also is going to go retrograde in Libra, which is the sign that rules relationships and the home of Venus. Now remember, Venus does not like Scorpio. Why does Venus not like Scorpio? Because Venus is the opposite sign of Taurus. Venus loves to put on really nice clothes, makeup, hide the pimple, hide your herpes if you've got a bad outbreak. Okay? I'm just speaking Scorpio here, geez, trying to wake up the room a little bit. Venus doesn't like to show its true colors fully, because what are our true colors? Oh man, I have a bunch of pimples today. I look like shit. Or, I got a really bad cut right here on my butt, and let me put a Band-Aid on it. That's Venus. Let's make it feel better. Let's make it look better. Let's even make the Band-Aid the color of the skin. Because in Taurus, it's money and it's self-worth. You don't feel at your highest self-worth when you walk in the room and you're like, look at fucking, I just got this pimple and it blew all over the place. Is it still got some blood leaking on my face? Do I look good? Everybody looks at you and goes, yeah, I don't think you want to go on a Tinder date looking like that. So it's important because for these last 6 years, as Saturn entered into Scorpio in 2012 at October, and we step it back from Saturn in Libra from 2009, but really it was 2010 when it officially enters. The 2010s have been nothing but, really weird relationship problems, and then going with deep inner weird shit in our souls that we all had that was dark, that was our fears, and all the stuff that we don't want to expose and show to people. Whether we have for me, it was an anxiety and panic disorder that I was hiding for years and masking through Taurus ways of drugs or something that made me feel good or strip clubs or whatever it is. We all have our own thing in our life that we, Taurus reminds us of what makes us feel good, whatever that might be. Whatever. When you're balding, it's like, fucking, I don't care, give me the spray. I feel better now. I want you to process all this because that's what the last 8 years, I'd say 6 because the Scorpio stuff's a lot more intense than Libra because Saturn loves Libra. If you guys don't know, Saturn is what we call exalted in Libra. Because what is Libra? It's the judge. And where better else can Saturn just hammer down that gavel and say, you're not doing things right? Libra. So what happened in our lives from 2010 to 2012 was we just started realizing there was shit in our life that wasn't fair, that wasn't equal to us. And we just said, fuck you, over, I'm moving on. We went into Scorpio and went, I don't know. I thought that it was going to be much better. Now I'm going into my own really shitty world of deep, dark stuff that really hasn't been dealt with yet. Intimacy problems, sexual stuff. All this stuff has been waiting forever for the beautiful planets of Jupiter and Venus to wash all that Saturn away. That's a good point. Now, I want to take everybody back even farther to the 1980s when I was born. The reason why the 80s are important are because the planet Pluto was in Libra from 1973 to 1983/4, because in 1983 Pluto went into Scorpio, and then back in 1984 it said, no, I'm going back into Libra, and then it came back, and then it went, well, no, I'm going back into Scorpio. And why is this important? Because Pluto is the planet of the underworld. So if you think Saturn can go down far, Saturn's just only going to walk into a room and deal with people, but when somebody starts crying in the corner and everything, what does the Saturn personality do, or the owner of a business? Hey, go over there and deal with that person. Thank you. Pluto, unfortunately, goes, I guess I got to be the one that deals with this and go all the way deep into it and get to the bottom of what the fuck's going on here. And realize it had nothing to do about that person in the corner, what anything says. It has to do with, I don't know, 5 weeks ago they got dumped by their boyfriend and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, But when Pluto went through this space in the 80s, what it did for relationships was start the whole idea of divorce. The 80s were the highest divorce rate that we had ever seen. Because it was still in the 70s, it was still kind of like, the Brady Bunch a little bit, but smoking weed now. So it was like, it was still kind of like, we're still keeping up our glass and everything's good. But did you hear that the Joneses are getting divorced? Wow. I don't know what's wrong with them. The 80s come and it's like, oh yeah, fuck that bitch. Getting out of here. Because Pluto goes to the deepest part of who we are. So the 80s were so gnarly, right? It's like Michael Jackson just like, oh, really? I'm going to be a vampire, yeah, and eat you. So all those deep layers were carved out like a freaking knife, just and pulling it out. Why do you think cocaine and drugs and all these deep shadow Scorpio stuff and HIV came out with Pluto and Scorpio? I think herpes has been around for a while. I don't know though. Is it? Oh. Yeah, so I guess there was a lot of outbreaks then too. But the reason why all this is important is because all this stuff just kind of went deep, and then we kind of went into the 90s and Pluto started coming to, finish Scorpio and come into Sagittarius, and we kind of just all went, okay, yeah, that happened. And then it was like the 90s where everybody's like starting to clean up. The Eagles return, and it's like Joe Walsh is sitting up there like, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm really okay now. Are you really okay? You know, we start to idealize, right, Sagittarius in the 2000s, this, you know, the way that the world should look, the way that we believe, we pull out our beliefs, you know? Why do you think religion and spirituality in the 2000s just totally went because our belief structures got shifted? And why do you think that the last 2 years, the whole spiritual revolution and festivals have popped up more than you've ever seen in the world? Saturn crossed where Pluto had been all through the 2000s, where it had seeded and gone to the bottom of our deeper, real deal belief systems. But why do you still think we're in the hanging chad of the spiritual revolution? Because Venus still needs a retrograde through Sag, right? And like we still got to have Jupiter retrograde through there to kind of put the icing on the cake. So think of Venus and Jupiter as cleanup on aisle 5. And Saturn as Pluto as the Manson family. Shit can go really weird really quick. You think it goes really good at first. I'm all for this, right? Yeah, you're awesome. Oh, you want me to go over to that house and do that? I don't know about that. I guess I'm doing it. That's the weird part of Pluto and Saturn. Why do you think in astrology Pluto and Saturn get such a bad rap? I always say, and I'm sure you heard on my horoscopes, I always call them the mafia dudes, you know? It's kind of like the guys sitting at the New York Italian place like that already just like, yeah, man, they didn't pay money. We're going to get over there and we're going to fuck them over. We're going to kill them. That's Saturn and Pluto, which, by the way, are about to conjunct next year. I don't know if you guys remember that. Those two bad boys are fucking about to hang out. The money collector and the killer. Oh, yeah. Who didn't pay their debt? You know, Santa Claus is tripping out over there because he secretly gave his bad list to them. I don't know what you're talking about. I got gifts to give. Saturn and Pluto are like, oh, great, this is a big list. We'll go into that later. But I have to show the other side of this. Does that make sense? So you get more of the contrast of why we're talking about relationships. Because everybody's coming to spiritual events going, okay, yeah, spiritual evolution and where it's going in the consciousness and all that shit. That's great, but that's not now. That's the end of this year, next year with Jupiter and Sag and all that stuff. This year is figuring out why every relationship is all like so weird and uncertain and unknown, and sexual stuff is really high and then really low, and where do I connect and where do I not connect, and does this taste good? Does this really smell good, or do I like that or do I not like that? That's what Venus and Jupiter are going to finally fix. This year. I mean, it's happening as we speak with Jupiter. Jupiter's right now retrograding through Scorpio, and it's trining over to Neptune. So it's got some support of kind of being easy with yourself that, yes, that shit happened, but you can let it go. God's got you, and angels are going to protect you, and that shit happened, and you learned your lessons, and it's over. I think part of the lesson of 2018 is remembering that all that crazy shit internally is actually over. And when you actually go into that fear of thinking it's going to reoccur, it's kind of like having, what's that word? When you have, PTSD. It's like you think it's going to go all to shit again really fast. And then you get to that line, and then Jupiter's there going like, there, child. I always call Uncle Jupe, right? Because you know, the good uncles in the back when you're like a 14-year-old kid is like, hey, try this real quick here. You know, I got you, don't worry about it. Because the uncle never judges you, right? The uncle always shows you something that you didn't. Hey, I know your dad. I know he's such a fucking asshole. He doesn't like this. Come here, let me show you this. You know what I mean? And it's always like, don't send him with Uncle Jimmy. That's Jupiter. Because Jupiter, remember, will go and open up all the doors. So as you're going through Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio right now, it's dealing with all that PTSD fear, and it's uncovering 30 years of that shit. Because Pluto went through there in the 80s, and then there was no major planets that were going retrograde through there. No outer planets, nothing like Saturn, no karmic planets. Mercury went in retrogrades, I'm sorry, that's a pebble of sand. People who come out to me like, Mercury retrograde, da, 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 da. I'm like, do you realize that's a fight? You're acting out Mercury retrograde. Oh my God. And it's usually like, the sound doesn't work, oh my God, my car, la, 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 la. And it's like, just go to the tire shop and get a new tire. That small, that's the issue. Oh my God, she texted me this and da 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 da. Okay, well then just call her on the phone. Mercury is not a karmic planet. You got to remember that Mercury is a little trickster, right? I've always called Mercury kind of like people didn't like it. I called him like the hermaphrodite back in the day, or because Mercury's not a male or a female. You know, Mercury's kind of like dickless and pussyless. But it has a great mouth. Swings both ways with that mouth too, you know what I mean? But so let's go back to some seriousness here. So if you think through the 80s, there was no planets through Pluto and Scorpio besides Pluto that did any retrogrades or any karmic stuff. Remember that Uranus was in Sagittarius in the 80s, and it was in the Scorpios in the 70s. So that wasn't there. Neptune was in Sagittarius all through the 80s, so that wasn't there. Pluto, we just know that was there. Now we have to start to go to Saturn. Oh, wait, Saturn wasn't there. Saturn was on the other side, or actually it had just passed. So, you know, it's like one of those things where you go, okay, we just went through the whole Saturn part over this last 8 years, let's say, okay? So the work and the construction has been done, but nobody has like done the whole ribbon show yet, you know, where they cut the ribbon and go, yay, it's open, and make you feel good. That's what Venus and Jupiter are. Venus and Jupiter Venus is one of the brightest stars in the sky, right? The goddess. So without the goddess there doing a retrograde, the reason why this is important because if a planet doesn't retrograde in an area, that means it's not doing shit. It's just showing up and being like, oh yeah, I've been here before. It's kind of like people at Disneyland walking through lines like, yeah, I've been on the Matterhorn 1,000,000 times. Yeah, right? That's when any planet goes through a sign. If it doesn't retrograde and stop and go, wait, we're not going on the ride? Now we're creating some really weird karma here, you know? Like, where are we going now? We're digging deeper, and we're going to reveal, well, what's happened here? So now that this stuff is going on, all that has been dealt with, relationships and sexual and connection, and the best thing that I can say is true feeling that is solid. That's the best way I could describe it. Because when Libra and Scorpio are cleared out and they are open for business and there's no weird planets doing anything in them, relationships and sex and connection is like, I don't know if you could even remember those times in the 90s. I remember my girlfriends in high school were like, or especially like my you know, like my high school girlfriends, it was like, there was just like it was just like, that's my girlfriend, you know? Like, it didn't kind of feel like things were always emotionally there, or like, I don't know. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't know. I can leave the room if you guys want, and I'm just spitting out shit. You don't get your money back, but you heard me talk about some funny things. And that's what I've been waiting for, is the highway to the danger zone, by the way. Now you guys know what my actual ringtone is. That's how I live my life. I guess that's it. There's no epiphanies, or there's no coincidences. There's epiphanies all the time. There's no coincidences, because I feel like relationships have been a highway to the danger zone. Like, okay, is it going to go that way, or which way is it going to go? The afterburner's going to turn on? Am I going to land? Am I going to, what the fuck's going down? The calmness is coming in that zone. Now, why? Because I always ask why as an astrologer. Because if you look at astrology, like, sure, okay, this stuff happens, and then it goes, well, what's next? And if we look at the next 5 years, holy shit, we better have some really solid people by us. Does that make sense? Because if we don't have solid people by us that we don't know are like really there, it's kind of a little scary to go through Capricorn, Pluto, Saturn transits, number one, or transits that we haven't been through since 1282, which brought on the Dark Ages, by the way. Not saying we're going to the Dark Ages, but we'll talk about that. But as we're moving into the energy that brought on the Dark Ages, it'd be really nice to have people that we knew are like, you're not bailing, are you? Okay, good. Okay, let's go. And the reason why that's important is because what is coming up? The 33-year transit of Saturn and Pluto conjunct. The last one was in 1983 and 84. And so, 2019, technically it was this year, right? Saturn came into Capricorn, or it was actually, the reason why they say 33 years is because Pluto is right now in Capricorn, and Saturn entered Capricorn in December 2017. So you can count the whole 1984 to 2017 and count that 33. Does that make sense? So, but it exactly conjuncts at the end of next year. Now, Saturn and Pluto transits are not easy because, like I said, it's homeboy that's counting the money and the guy who kills everybody hanging out together. And Saturn and Pluto transits are literally world-shaking vibrations. So the last one was 1983 and 84. We talked a lot about HIV and Michael Jackson, but there was a lot about that whole kind of, because the last one was the 33 years before that. So you got to go, okay, let's go backwards now, right? And at that time, it's kind of like that whole late 50s vibe of like Betty Crocker and, the housewife with the apron on. That erased in the 80s. Now it was microwaves. And it was, wives going to work now, which was great for the women because it actually brought women to realize this isn't fair. Because Pluto and Saturn, what they do is they change the structure of life. And it happened in Libra, which is fairness, right? So it started to bring an equal playing field to everybody in life, right? And ever since then, we've been on a 33-year ride of that, trying to make everything fair. Now, some people still don't think the world's fair. I agree. But things are a lot more fair than they've ever been than right now, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? And I guarantee you by the end of next year, the level playing field in life will feel level. Does that make sense? So it's another thing besides relationships, but what happened during that time was there was way too many imbalances, right? Then Pluto and Saturn actually went into Scorpio, and of course, have you guys ever seen the movie, American Psycho? When Christian Bale is just, hey, how you doing? Like, I listen to Huey Lewis in the news. And right, it was about kind of like the shadow side of the planet coming out at extreme places. I mean, have you guys watched Cops in the 80s? Those ones are crazy. The ones now, I'm like, so predictable. But the ones in the 80s were crazy, like, she motherfucking didn't kill me, and I got a gun. It's Pluto and Saturn and Scorpio. So all that stuff is about to end in those areas. But Capricorn is government, structures, the rule of the world, the rule of law. All this stuff is up for debate. Is CNN right or is Fox News right? Neither. MSNBC. Or Turkish, whatever that one, the Young Turks. Or is it Alex Jones and Infowars.com? And I'm not saying what it is, but these are the debates and these are the changes that are coming what is the law of the land? What is the structure of this world? What is that going to look like? We all know that this country right now is going through a major crisis point as far as not knowing do we want to follow the Constitution or are we not? I live in California, which is now the New South. We're the Confederates now, if you guys didn't know. It's true. We almost bought a Trump sticker, but we put plenty of American flags all over my RV coming here because once I go through Nebraska and Ohio and they see a California plate, guess what? That's like a Confederate flag now. Does that make sense? It's all flipped. Now that's a whole Neptune and Pisces story we can go into, but that's combined with this Pluto Saturn, that the government doesn't even know what the hell's about to hit them, right? That the big choice is going to be if this is going to be like Big Brother, where in China they just did how many millions of cameras? 270 million CCTV? Did you guys see that recently? One of my buddies, I won't say your name, dude. One of my buddies sold a bunch of them to China, made a good profit off it too. Bought a nice boat with it too. But anyways, that's all the whole Big Brother thing, right? Capricorn, where it like tries to control people, where Saturn rules. So we're going to go into a huge debate about whether this country should go this way or that way. Should we keep the Constitution? I guarantee you over the next 5 years, that is going to come up 100%. They're already trying to change the electoral vote. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I don't know. But that's like peanuts compared to what's coming. Now, as an American who wears an American flag, I'm a little scared because I'm kind of about believe it or not, I really believed in the Freemasons' original ideas and the Constitution, personally, because of the time in which we were in. But nobody knows what's the best for us at the end of the day, and I think that's what's about to be on the blackboard coming up. And so we need to have good people and good partnerships and the right people that are destined for us to enter that space. And that's what's going to be the scariest part between now and the end of this year, especially in October, November, is it's a radical, unknown, karmic storm brewing that will redirect the trajectory of you and your partnerships forever. Some deep shit. That from now until the end of the year, especially you're going to feel it the most around October, November of this year, that the universe is redirecting the karma of dealing with, and we'll add we'll just say, is redirecting the karma of your relationships in a way that you are probably not prepared for understanding the way it's going to go yet. Like, we all have this weird sense, like, I know where this is going with this relationship, and then the next day, no, actually, I think it's going this way now. And then, right when you're going that way, it turns over and goes this way. And that's because this zone. Have you guys ever watched like a war movie and there's just a bunch of dead bodies everywhere? Well, that's been Pluto and Saturn through Libra and Scorpio. That's just nobody's cleaned up the bodies. So the best analogy I can give you is it's really stinking now. So you walk through this valley of relationships and sexual connections and stuff, and it's like, bad. Oh, this area is okay. And then right when you go, oh, it's really good here, a big whiff of something else comes. Whoa. I know it's dramatic, but this zone needs some Febreze. Now, why do I say the next 6 months? Well, this year, before the Venus retrograde, is the opposite. It's a Mars retrograde. When was the last time anybody here remembers a Mars and Venus retrograde in the same year? No. So usually it's like, oh, this year's a Mars retrograde year. This year's a Venus retrograde year. Because Venus is an 18-month going forward, and then finally, in our view, it'll retrograde backwards for 40 days and 40 nights. For real. And then Mars is every, 2 years, where, of course, men, right? Oh, say 18 months, I need another 6 months to keep going forward until finally God goes, you're going to pull a hernia, dude. Stop. I was about to use, is it too soon? Or you're going to pull a Bill Cosby. And you don't want to do that to get what you want. That's the thing about ego. Ego is the ruler of Mars, right? So all our egos can go only so far in life until where God goes, okay, take it off. Stop. Just do us all a favor and stop. And so Mars is going to go retrograde this year. And why is that important? Because this is happening next month, June 25th. And it just so happens to happen in the sign of Aquarius. And this is where the South Node is. And if you don't know what the South Node is the lunar nodes of the moon. Which way is east and west? Because east is this way? Oh, no, west is that way. And so the sun rises this way, and the sun, well, the light looks like it's over there, so that must be east, right? I mean, west. That's west. Where does the sun set? Oh, okay. Because I saw light here, so I'm thinking it's setting there. I'm a Californian, so I'm lost. So, you guys have all this reflection, high vibrational, high elevation stuff. Really, yeah. Why do you think all these people got lost coming here and died? You got to be a tough person to live in Denver. That's what I'm going to be honest. You guys are the toughest motherfuckers on the planet. We're like so easy in California. Oh, Mickey and Minnie and the beach. Paris Hilton. Oh my God. Arnie, be our governor. I'll make California great again, yes. So anyway, what the lunar nodes are is we call something not astrology, but just if the way that you understand the rotation of the earth and the understanding of the movements of the sun and the moon, we have something called the ecliptic, which is the ecliptic plane. It's this invisible line that you can always count on the sun and the moon going down that line. Have you ever noticed that the moon doesn't go over there, or every morning you wake up and the sun's not over there? Does that make sense? There is a 100% guaranteed line that the sun and the moon are going to be on. And of course, depending on the season we're in, it's going to be higher or lower, but that's because of where we're at in spinning, right? From our vibration of the sun. If we're in summer, of course, we're on the right tilt, so we get more of it, so we see more of the band. Or if we're in winter, we don't see it at a good angle because of now we're on the wrong side, if that makes sense, so it looks smaller, but it's still the same band, okay? What the nodes of the moon are an invisible mathematical place in the sky that actually is exactly at the point to where if the sun and the moon were to meet at this place, there would be an eclipse, because it would be the perfect spot that the mathematics of where the moon's rotation is and the sun is where it is in our viewpoint, if it were to meet at that exact same time, because how many times do we have what we call a new moon, right? We have it every 28 and a half to 29 days. So guess what? You never see the moon and the sun go in front of it. That's because just the math is off. But eclipses, they're when the nodes are in the right spot. And this invisible knot, because node in Latin is knot. These invisible knots, every 18 months, move into a new sign, okay, along the ecliptic. And there's an opposite one, on the other side. And the reason why this is important to know about the nodes is because I'm trying to remember why I brought up the nodes, but for Aquarius, correct, thank you. So because the South Node, so in Eastern astrology, the nodes are the dragon. The north being the dragon's mouth, and the south being the tail. shit comes out of there, great fire comes out of there. Does that make sense? I don't think they thought of it that way, but I think of it that way. So wherever the South Node is, we have some cleanup to do. And we actually think it's a lot easier because we all poop really easy, right? We do it every day. Try and belt some fire out. That's not easy. That's just one way to look at it. So whenever the South Node is in a sign, this is an area to which the world and ourselves get pulled towards manifesting and doing, and it's physically showing up in our world more. So why do you think there's been more rebellion over the last year with Uranus or the South Node in Aquarius? Why do you think everybody's trying to do all these crazy Facebook things and the social media world and all these crazy things in Aquarius, right? Aquarius is the sign of opinions because Leo is the kingdom, right? Where it just goes, I'm the king and we're raising taxes. I don't give a fuck what you say, goodbye. And then everybody starts going, oh my God, this is wrong, this is wrong. Aquarius is where we rebel. So Mars is now in Aquarius, just came in the other day. The South Node is here, and this is where the retrograde's gonna happen. Are you kidding me? And Mars is our ego. It's our strength, it's our ambition, it's our courage to do what we want. It also is, even if you're a woman, you know, that Randy energy, right? Not Schmitten, that's Venus. Randy. You can be Schmitten and not Randy, and you can be Randy and definitely not Schmitten. But if you can combine Schmitten and Randy, that's what we're all looking for, right? So the fact that this is combining with the whole relationship deal is because Mars now is going to come retrograde on June 25th, exactly where the South Node is. Not like to the degree, but within a degree or two, right? If you guys have looked at have you guys looked at this yet? Anybody? So as an astrologer, you go, okay, what does this mean? Well, number one, Aquarius is the water bearer. Just like and I say this in my horoscope, so if we were to look at this front row and I was a water bearer, I'd be like, here you go, here's some water. Here you go, here's some water. Here you go, here's some water. But now what if she says, can I get more? No, I have to, what am I gonna do at this point? I only have enough for these people. Do I go back and give more to her but leave him out? No, poor. Why do you think Aquariuses don't give a fuck about you when you ask them to come back and they already left? That's not forward thinking. Uranus, Aquarius. So you don't go backwards with Mars. But unfortunately, with the South Node here and with Mars here, this is the tendency for us to start to go, well, because the North Node, where the fire-breathing dragon head is where we're, and especially in Eastern philosophy and in Western this is where to aim. The best way to describe this is a ship. The bow of the ship is the North Node, and the stern of the ship is the South. So whatever's in the South, don't go that way. That's the stern. And unfortunately, we're in a world right now where everybody is lost in Aquarius. It happens. We just had it in Pisces in 2016 and 2015, and everybody was lost literally, spiritually. And the media was completely deceiving us. And it was also the election during Neptune in Pisces with the South Node. Do you guys remember that? That was pretty crazy. We were all like, what the hell? Now we're in Aquarius where it's like, oh my God, they just got rid of charities. Unfortunately, this isn't the time for charities because everybody needs to get back on track with Leo, their own happiness. You can't help everybody if you haven't been fully, and I'm saying fully. You can't give me this bullshit like, I'm happy. No. We're talking like, I am in the kingdom of all kingdoms of happiness, and I'm rolling on ecstasy without even being on it. Unless you're feeling that way, Then you can help people because it's like, I'm already at that happiness. What do you need? I'll come back to you. I've got plenty. I feel great. I've got enough to go around all day. The problem with Mars now is it's going to force people to keep. What else is Aquarius? Where we fix things. What does the king do in Leo? All those people died in that war and all that shit's okay. Fuck them. Let me do something else. You know what I mean? Aquarius tries to fix intricate objects and fix things and keep everybody happy. Because in Aquarius, it wants everybody to be served and happy. But unfortunately, if you put yourself in the position where you're trying to make other people happy before yourself, do you know what that equals? Extreme unhappiness in yourself. Because if your heart ain't happy, the number one thing that comes out of your heart not being happy is spiritual depression because you're not getting anything out of life that you desire. And of course, the nodes teach us balance too, so we just can't say fuck you to charity either, if that makes sense. But maybe you shouldn't lead with charity first and lead with your happiness first. And this is just the astrology, right? Like if the North Node was in Aquarius right now and Mars was there, it'd be like, okay, it's time to try to fix people and fix the world. But unfortunately, we're trying to fix a broken world because the people in it are broken. So do you think anybody has the answer to fix everything? It's the individuals that need to fix themselves first. Does that make sense? So Mars coming retrograde is going to be the ultimate, especially in relationships, because of all that relationships going down. And Mars is in a sign of relationships because Aquarius deals with, let me try to fix it. And so our egos start to go, I could fix this no matter how weird it is. Oh, wait, it's going retrograde. Maybe I need to rethink this. And then it comes into the sign of Capricorn again, where Capricorn is why do you think Mars is exalted in Capricorn, its favorite? Because at the end of the day, especially for you Denver folks, to get to the top of the mountain, to get to the top of the mountain, you have to push yourself and you have to do the hardest stuff in the world. If somebody's lagging behind, you eventually have to say, the camp's that way, or we'll call somebody and help you. We're going to continue to keep going. And these are the hard things of Saturn and Capricorn that we have now, and Mars retrograding in Aquarius back into Capricorn is the universe is just not in a space that is going to allow you to continually not make the tough choices of the Jupiterian retrograde and direct motion that's about to happen of what you truly, authentically, and North Node in Leo, and guess where the eclipses are again this summer? Leo. That your own individual kingdom, nobody knows the answer to that but yourself. And you are a king or queen trying to keep all the townsmen happy without rubbing the wrong stuff, but it's going to be impossible. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to have a kingdom without purple doors or whatever the fuck you want, you know? But everybody's telling you, no, you can't, or no, I can't do that because then it's going to affect this, or it's going to affect that, or it's going to affect this, or it's going to affect them hard, or I don't want to hurt them, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want... This is the problem that's coming this summer, is the opposition of a lunar eclipse to Mars retrograde, the moon conjunct Mars in Aquarius, and a sun in Leo with the nodes. That's July 26th into 27th. So the reason why this is important is, and you know what? The universe doesn't make anything weird. That's why Dwight and I had this conversation out there. Is because your own way is the only way at this point. Because you cannot attract the right business partners, lovers, friendships, and all the right people that you've always wanted in your life if you are living a lie. Because when you live a lie, or you put yourself to try and be somebody that you're fully not, you're going to attract a situation that will always keep reminding you of what you're not. I know, I don't like doing these shows sometimes. You know? Because I think that this is one of the hardest things we've ever gone through. Why do you think Venus hates to be in Scorpio? Because it's so hard to tell somebody, do I look great in jeans today? Yes. Venus and Scorpio cannot. I mean, you guys ready to talk about some sex? Yeah. All right. There's orgasms, and then there's orgasms. There's claws in the back, and then we're done. Defining where you're at in that space energetically in your relationships is defining where you're at in your relationship. Scorpio is what I like to call because what is Libra? Libra is, hi, nice to meet you. Hi. Let's be partners. Great. That's all Libra is. It's diplomacy. I'll do this, and you do that. Now, we move into Scorpio. You don't smell good. Well, I'm not changing. I like the way I smell. It's not turning me on. I'm sorry. Well, bye-bye. That was the very mild kindergarten version. Because Venus and what is Venus? Venus is our senses, our smells, our taste, our desires, our wants to make us feel good, right? Well, when it comes into Scorpio, it's like, okay, put my leg up there and knock me 12 times on the head and slap me in the face, and then that's going to be exactly what it is. That's Venus and Scorpio, right? It's like some people are going to be down for that and find a connection that's down and like, yeah, baby. Or others are going to be looking at you like, that's what's hard about this, is because that stuff is coming up while Venus then comes back into Libra over that 0 degree spot where there was a major eclipse with the sun and Venus that burned Venus out. In old traditional astrology, whenever a sun and Venus conjunction happens, it's literally the sun burning Venus out. So you have to remember that the middle point, this is no bullshit. November of 2010 is when we had Venus retrograde in Scorpio, okay? October 23rd of 2014, the sun and Venus conjunct in Scorpio on a new moon solar eclipse at the midpoint, and that would be the midpoint of your relationship life, being like, am I swiping left still or am I swiping right? Or am I going to stay in this marriage or am I not going to stay in this marriage? Am I going to be single or am I going to be in a relationship? Am I getting what I really want emotionally or am I fucking still going to beat off to porn every day? That was the midpoint right there. I'll never forget that solar eclipse either. I remember being in Hollywood, and unfortunately, I was on the latter part of things with Tinder and pornography. Wasn't a fun time, but now we're at the marker, the other marker, this October, November, that's going to complete that whole cycle. And they always say, and this is true, I believe this 100%, that when eclipses happen, they can last for years until they are finally understood. Because it's a lot like a tattoo, a solar eclipse, a spiritual tattoo. Because if you think of an eclipse, you actually see it and you're like, holy good Jesus. And it literally is like into your soul. Thank you. But sometimes it's like, like, when does that actually be understood what was downloaded? Well, Venus is going to retrograde over that eclipse midpoint zone that was exactly the midpoint of these transits. Does that make sense? That's as a math person and an astrologer, I'm like, no. Because now we talked about Venus and Scorpio, right? The ooh yeah or oh no. Venus now is going to come into Libra and be like, well, I know what down here likes. Is this situation connected with that situation? Or am I only living in this situation? Or am I only living in this one? Am I only living in a sexual connection? Or am I only living in a, well, we've been in it for 35 years, darling. We'll go another 5 more. But those pornos look really good, so I'll be back in 20 minutes. And she's going to Vegas and Thunder Down Under's in town. This is the shit that we're all going through, unfortunately. But the good news is it's all going to be worked out. And I believe, and I'm not saying that this means breakups. I'm not saying that this means, the end to the relationships you're in or something like that. Because I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that the answer of whatever is karmically for the best of us, sexually and romantically with relationships, is going to happen. And you need to be prepared to not let your ego and its retrograde action in Aquarius with the South Node try and be the all-knowing, right? Because Aquarius is where we try and figure out the genius or try and make weird things come together or weird things work. Unfortunately, your ego can't attach to an identity of trying to make a weird relationship work or worry about what everybody's going to think or worry about the results of what's going to happen and how that's going to affect your social presence in the world. You have to go all the way to the Leo world and go, that's what I like and what I want, and some people don't get it. I mean, Steven Tyler just knocked up Kate Hudson. It happened, right? People are looking on their phones right now. Do you think that in the middle of this relationship, do you really think they're going to make that one happen? I don't know. Now I'm getting a little bit more psychic than astrology, but I'm using the astrology to look at the background to which they're doing it. Do you think that this royal wedding that is a fucking hellstorm right now on these exact moments that are about to come up is a coincidence? She should have just been a cam model, She would have done much better. But the whole thing is, who knows what's the best for you in your karmic story of relationship? I don't know it. I can only give you the understandings of what's coming. And your own story and your own likes and your own wants in a relationship need to be worked out. And I'm telling you this because we still haven't been there, so you still have to work it all out. Does that make sense? So nobody, especially if you're a single person right now and you actually think like, oh yeah, so I just met this person and da-da-da. You guys are individually both still in that cycle of figuring it out. And maybe it'll be great to where you two will work. But I would give it till the end of this year till you start like hammering down it's all the way, like I know it for sure, because this is way too karmically weird in the universe coming, if that makes sense. So if you want to go have some fun, this is a great time for fun, I guess. And in relationships, this is a lot of work coming. This is not a lot of, and the work doesn't have to be hard. Does that make sense? So the work could be fun. Maybe you guys go on vacations together and everything, but at the end of the day, you catch them. Stop looking at those asses on the beach. And then, homeboy's like, fuck, man. Did I just waste my last 20 years of my life not being me? This is hard shit. Eclipses in Leo are no joke because you can only be happy when you reach it fully. None of this whole, and it's, why do you think Uranus just came into Taurus? Your quality of life is at stake now. So what is Uranus? The ultimate enlightened one that gets you to heaven. Well, if you're not living a quality of life, that elevator doesn't know how to lift you up. Damn it. So, and why do you think Uranus has been in Aries? It's been teaching you. And I think it's so ironic that when Uranus enters Aries, everybody starts going, ego is bad. Okay, let's all be blank pieces of paper. Who's down for that? I think what we've all realized at the end of Uranus and Aries here, now it's not officially over. Remember, it jumps back in November and jumps back in the beginning of 2019 to Taurus. But this is the whole, are you going to live the life you've always wanted and at the quality, or are you just going to lay down and fucking die the way you don't want to live? Because what's coming is a whole new structure of a whole new world. What's coming in 2020 and beyond is literally, we're talking a world we can't even freaking comprehend. The same way that my great-grandparents couldn't even comprehend a touchscreen phone that plays Highway to the Danger Zone when somebody calls me. This is just small stuff compared to what's coming with Pluto entering Aquarius in 2023, right? Into 2024 where it's official. Saturn and Jupiter dead conjunct, the exact degree of 0 degree at the borderline of 29 Capricorn and 0 Aquarius, where Pluto sits on the American chart in 2020. The stuff that is coming is so major. The stuff that I've been talking to you guys about is deep and extreme, but not, it's more inner than it is outer that's coming. Does that make sense? So what we've been dealing with is a lot more inner stuff, but the outer stuff is about to change. So we better get that inner stuff figured out because the fireworks show is about to get crazy, and sitting next to somebody that you really don't want to sit next to and then just looking around at everybody else at the fireworks show is not a way, because now you're not enjoying the fireworks show and connected to what you want to connect with. I think the hardest part about this, for me, telling people this, is I haven't heard anybody say this stuff anywhere. And it's because I think as an astrologer, if you really put all these pieces together, that's the truth. Astrology doesn't lie, unfortunately. No human can change the planets from their mathematical precise. The only thing you can rely on in this world, besides God, in my opinion, is astrology. Because, I read tarot, but I always put it last because it's the astrology doesn't lie. I can't interpret it any different, if that makes sense. I can't be it's reversed, but it could be really good for me. It's kind of astrology mathematically, you can look at 14,262 AD and know exactly where everything's going to be. We can go all the way back to 1282 and know exactly where everything was. That is gnarly, if you think about that. So, denial is the biggest part of what I'm going to bring up through this part of the lecture. The reason why I'm going to bring up denial, hold on one second. I'm not in denial, I love Sprite, so. And I don't care what people think. The corn syrup's bomb in America. So, Neptune is in Pisces. Really weird planet, by the way. It's kind of like watching, whenever you watch the movie Alien or any of these weird sci-fi flicks, where it's like, we're on a cruise to the destination of this area of the universe that humans have never been before. And everybody is smiling and in their suits with their names on. And then they get there and it's all not what they thought. Right? That's Neptune, right? Like, whatever you think it is, it isn't. Because Neptune is the great deceiver. But on the other hand of Neptune, it is the great spiritually psychic one. So it's like, I know this is going to be good, but I don't know what it's going to look like. Does that make sense? Like I know that the vision's going to be great, but I don't know that it was, a rainbow that popped up, or I don't know, who knows, right? Neptune is the denial queen. And right now it's at 16 degrees of Pisces. It is exactly now halfway through Pisces, which means since it came in 2011, we are finally really waking up to... Do you think it's any coincidence that weed is legal now in all these states when Neptune and Pisces? It rules drugs, it rules denial, and everybody's trying to deal with it by whatever means they can. Not saying weed's bad. I'm just saying, do you think it's a coincidence? Because the denial is so strong of the truth that it's easy to escape into pictures and memories that we want to create or dreams that we want to become true that we hang on to. But unfortunately, there are no hooks, there are no ropes, there are no nothing on Neptune. It is a water sign. It is the craziest water sign, Pisces, because it is a mutable water sign. That's why it rules the ocean. So you drown in your denial. Even in some of the oldest astrology books, whether you go into Christian astrology, which was, about 1,000 years or 700 years ago, or you go into some of the, and it's weird because Neptune wasn't around then, but it's like, whenever you talk about Pisces, it's like, and especially as kind of the more new age astrologers now have been really looking at it, even a Neptune trine, a positive aspect to Neptune has some sort of denial in there or escape. So, why do you think spirituality and God is Neptune based? Not saying that there's denial there, but there's also there's a little bit of the unknown that we try to, gloss over that is known. Right? Like, we really don't know about certain things spiritually, but we believe them spiritually, right? About our psychic abilities or our abilities to, be a medium, or maybe our abilities to know our boss is going to fire us next week. Like, are we going to deny that and just shrug it off, or are we going to hold on to the notion that everything's okay? I always think about when it comes to people who have been a victim to anything in this life, anything. And it was usually the victim was in just denial of what was happening for so long, And sometimes that's not the truth. Sometimes it's just an obliterate, this person got abused in a horrible way. But Neptune is the ruler of that unfortunate abuses or those unfortunate situations that make us feel like we've been burned by God or we've been fucked by God or whatever you want to call it. Because it's the ultimate teacher of connecting to God through the sacrifice of whatever we had to go through to find a higher vibration. Does that make sense? So We create our own denials about certain things because we're afraid to accept the spiritual truth of the situations and rise to a higher spiritual level in our life. And when that is trining over to Jupiter this year, in Scorpio of the truth, it's the ultimate, trying to gloss over the denial of your deeper sexual needs, wants, and connections. And then Neptune comes into a square with Jupiter in 2019. And that means everybody who didn't this year be real, actually, finally admit the truth of whatever their situation is and work it out and not be in denial. Neptune will square Jupiter and be like, well, the tickets to Disneyland required non-denial, but unfortunately you have a denial ticket. We're letting people through in a couple years. There's a line over there. Because why do I say that? Well, Neptune square Jupiter is like the doors open when you are not in denial of it, or you're not buying into, especially Neptune and Jupiter are ultimate storytellers, right? Of this great grand vision. Well, are you going to be able to access that if you're just continuing to not or hang on to a ropeless, drowning, story that you believe and that you're just not ready to do the deeper, real, emotional work? That's what 2019 is. And with Saturn and Pluto conjunct, which Pluto's about truth, Saturn's about laying down the law of the land and only going to admit people. It's like Denver, right? You guys have NORAD, right? Only the president and all of his chief staff members can go there if there's a nuclear bomb. We were talking about that upstairs with the VIP. What do you think Saturn in Capricorn is? Only the highest people are allowed in. Do you think that you or I could go walk into Donald Trump's office right now without some sort of pass or some sort of reason of some sort of hierarchy? No. Even though it's our country. There still are. Saturn and Capricorn is why do you think Saturn is ruled by the devil? And when it's at home, it's not that there's a devil. It's that the devil sucks because it's the truth of hard shit. There is hard realities in this world. That's one of them. And even though it's not that hard, Saturn conjunct Pluto at the end of 2019 is doubling down the most extreme on top of Saturn. The last time Saturn and Pluto went conjunct in Capricorn was in the 1500s in 1517 with Leonardo da Vinci leading the way of the Illuminati against the church. Ironically enough, he was the one painting the pictures that they love so much with secret messages teaching people to not go that direction. This is the ultimate test of who is awake and who is asleep. Who are sheep and who are herders. Because 2019, if you don't take 2018's truth in your, not only just your relationships, but in every part of your being of what your heart and it's a mission of love, and what love is unfortunately starts with the self first. That's what Leo teaches, and everybody in the here can hate me for the rest of their lives and think love is a universal thing, but unfortunately the universal thing comes second. Because if you have a bunch of miserable fucking people, I don't know how there's going to be love everywhere. It's like loving a bunch of, miserable people. I mean, sure, it's there, but there isn't a really nice love connection going on. A world with a bunch of happy people is a lot easier to be a universally loving planet. So everybody's searching for the reason why everybody's not getting together and all this shit, it's because everybody's fucking hanging on to these crazy denial, weird relationships of truth, inner shadow work of what your desires are and what you really want in this life, and the fear of really being that person fully. Because now we have Facebook, and now we have all these things in life, and now we have CNN and Fox News telling us how to be. And so everybody now, especially because Mars is in Aquarius and going to retrograde there, this is you having to shave off all of your ego's connections to social norms and erase that stuff. And then look at yourself in the mirror and go, well, I got rid of worrying about what my grandma thinks. I've now don't care what everybody on Facebook thinks. I now don't care what everybody else thinks. Now I can see myself purely. Who here used to watch Hook? Remember, with Robin Williams? What happened to him at the beginning of the movie? He turned into a lawyer who was always on the phone. He never liked his family. He wasn't sexual, you could tell. He would send somebody to record his kids' baseball game with a video camera. When he goes back to London and he goes and does his speech and they take his kids and he has to go back to Neverland, he has to refine his heart, but his ego of the way that he's become, and he had forgotten about who he really was, and he had forgotten about his real self and his happy self. And they always, like Toodles used to say, find your happy place and your marbles and all that shit. And remember all the. I know I'm bringing up a crazy thing right now, but there was all the kids, right? The Lost Boys, and they were all trying to find your happy thoughts. You can't be part of the circle if you're not happy in yourself. You can't see the food. Remember the food scene where all the food and it's all empty, and he's sitting there going. And he's starving because all day he's been, doing all this stuff, and they were like trying to make him pan again. He wasn't allowed to sit at the table until he found his happy thoughts. And what was the one thing that brings Peter Pan the ability to fly was his happy thoughts and his happy heart. And unfortunately, that's something that only you know inside. And unfortunately, it is such a hard world because we are being told, especially in the spiritual community. Why do you think I start with this? And I'm not saying we're over, but I'm just like ending with this, is like, you can't go there if you are so trying to make everybody else happy first. It just won't happen. And that's what this solar eclipse in Leo is going to be on October 8th and 9th. And actually what's even more interesting to me is the solar eclipse happening on June 12th, because that solar eclipse is going to be in exact opposition to Pluto. Exact. 20 degrees Cancer, sun and moon. It's going to be a partial solar eclipse in Cancer, dealing with our emotions and our safety and what makes us, feel good and comfortable. Well, in a deep opposition with Pluto and Capricorn, with a deeper revealing of the harsh truth of our reality, in which we must make difficult decisions and changes to reach where we really want to go, or be left behind in comfort land where, sure, it was comfortable to not make a decision, but I think it's also kind of the feeling of being left out of a life in which you really... The real comfort is making a tough decision, not avoiding the tough decisions. That's what that eclipse is going to set for the next 6 months, starting July 12th. And why do you think these really gnarly Venus retrograde and Mars retrogrades are going to be happening in the middle of that whole 6-month cycle of these eclipses? Does that make sense? Deep. And then, of course, that gnarly lunar eclipse on July 26th, that's going to be conjunct Mars in Aquarius, where we emotionally are going to put everything into trying to keep it together and go against our heart's will. July 26th and 27th, yeah. And that's just the middle point. And then we end at 18 degrees of Leo, that solar eclipse, which goes, oh boy, yeah, this is what I really want. So I would say that the most wonkiest time of the summer is going to be August, July into August of 2018, because there's a Mars retrograde, there's massive eclipses happening in opposition to Pluto and opposition to Mars retrograde. Saturn is going to be getting ready to come back online. Jupiter will be coming direct in Scorpio during that time. There's going to be a Mercury retrograde in the middle of these eclipses. I don't know if you guys watch, I did a 2018 report for free. I put it out. I said that would be the gnarliest time. So I guess my thing about we're here in person, what can I say about all this, is that you're going to have to, and this is your own journey, so do whatever you want. But you have a major choice in front of you this year. Know that the world is going to go fucking bananas in the next couple years, especially at the end of 2019 into 2020. Just know that. Just know that as a check mark. It's guaranteed. Do you really want to go into that world 85 to 95% happy? Like, do you, like, how many people have done past life regressions here? One of the things my past life regressionist always asks me when I'm in my lives is she always takes me to my funeral or my burial. And she asks me to look up and see who's there. There's been some good funerals I've had. And there's also been some ones where I died alone. And when you get to that end place in your journey here, this life, and as a Leo, and I guess you guys came here to watch the Leo King, so let me just spread some Leo-ness on you for a second. You want to smile on your deathbed and be like, God, remember when I did that and I did this and that shit was the bomb? Or, which I think regret is in my opinion, the one feeling I do not like the most is regret. And I think the problem with what this summer brings is, what side of regret in the decisions are you ready to make a harder decision about? The regret from leaving something that maybe you'll regret because you won't know where it could have gone, but maybe the patterns or maybe the things that you've been going have already shown it, so you'd be crazy because you already know where it's been going. Or the regret of not seeing where your heart really wants to go. And I'm not saying that this means that you know exactly yet, because I think that's what this next 6 months is about. But that will be the main choice at the end of it, is like, what side of regret is worse here? Ooh, because there's going to be regret on either side, right? Like, it's not like the decision's going to be super clear, like, this is the way, yeah, all right, let me go. We're all humans. We all know that if we choose to go another direction or we choose to go in this direction, there is some part of that decision that is cut away, that part of our life we are not going to go towards and see at this moment, and maybe based off the astrology that we're not going to go down that road. Are you going to regret not going down that road? Are you going to regret leaving that road? Or are you going to regret which road is it going to be? The best advice I can give you is your deathbed. And the second best advice I can give you is denial. Like, you will have to look in the mirror and erase all of those things that have been holding you back from denial of your truth. And I think now that Uranus being in Taurus for this next 7 to 8 years is going to revolutionize and make you realize, like, quality of life is everything. And that's been missing for a long time. As Saturn was in Scorpio opposing that space forever, we now have Jupiter in Scorpio opposing that space. So we're digging deep into the trenches of our desires and our shadow in order for us to build a quality version of our life. And unfortunately, if you're afraid of your shadow, if you're afraid of your truth, like I came out 6 weeks ago, I think some people know, and I just started smoking cigarettes again. I don't know why. I don't even know how it came up. I quit for 5 years, and then out of nowhere, I was just like in Vegas, of all places. And I'm like, give me that cigarette, dude. I want one. Fuck it. And I don't care what anybody thinks. I really don't care, because you know what? I'm enjoying going through this shadow work. Now, even in my shadow work, I go, well, it's probably not going to be the best for your race career as a jet ski racer. So I went to a jet ski race 2 weeks ago, and there I am on the first lap. 78 miles an hour, turning, oh, shit. Oh. Okay, there's the lesson of quality of life now. So I want to add this to the relationship thing. I know, sure, you know, maybe with this desire you go, oh yeah, I really want this. Okay, yes. Sorry, that's my Scorpio voice. And then, you know, but then there's the quality of my life. Is that going to be good for me and my quality of life? So as you're weighing all these things out, this gets really complicated. It gets really complicated about your happiness, right? It's like, okay, I really want this, but is it really good for me at the end of the day? Am I willing to live through that? And will that be the ultimate quality of life? These are very deep, deep shadows things that you need to work out. And the number one thing besides those two things I told you, which was, of course, you know, don't do the deniability, and I think more importantly, like, just don't worry about what everybody thinks, and knowing your truth. But I think the big one is to not be afraid of playing with all the shadows, to know the full extent of what the shadow work showed you, to know to be your greatest light. Because the ultimate regret is not experiencing right now Jupiter and Scorpio. Like, the red light district is on in the universe. It is open for service. And I don't mean literally, but in some ways I do. Because why do you think Scorpio is ruled by red? The red light. No, I'm just kidding. The red chakra, if you go look up at the star Antares, which is technically in the Scorpio constellation, it's red. But why do you think sex is always red colors and black? It's no coincidence. So if you're afraid of those places, or you go, oh my God, like, get me out of here today. I'm not, it's your journey, I get it. But if you're afraid to open up and explore who you really are in so many different ways, are you really looking fully at yourself? Like, everybody has like bent over and like looked at their butt and been like, what's this? How do I pick this out? Like, come on. Like, you're doing it. Just why haven't you done it in life too, if that makes sense? Like that's the whole lesson here of a full life. We live in a contained, you know what this blows my mind the most? This huge Capricorn transit coming up is, where are people living their lives in chains? Where are people living their lives in their own prisons? Not spiritual prisons like at the 12th house or Pisces, although that is there with Neptune, so they're living in their own deniability prisons. But the actual physical reality prisons that right now are in the making, that people are needing to break through. Because everybody talks about a new Earth. Everybody talks about an age of Aquarius. Well, this place sure doesn't look like it when everybody's walking down the street like, I can't go knock on that house and ask for sugar anymore. Everybody's afraid to be. I walk down the street all the time and I say, hey! People walk by me like this. Fucking great new Earth this place is. You can tell the people who are open in this world. They're very observant and very easy to be like, yo, I've explored everything. Trust me, I've seen it all. It doesn't make you a bad person. But everything we're taught through all religions, everything that we are taught through all the spiritual, I hate to say mumbo jumbo that's going around right now, is trying to hold you back from being you. Because it's all focused on the collective first and not letting the individual find itself to find where it fits in the collective. It's just like a picture, like this beautiful man right here. Everybody is a piece of a picture and their own unique color or vibration in this whole universe that we are. If we were all this color, that's all we are. So as a collective, are we wanting to be a colorful picture of a beautiful picture of a beautiful man? No, I'm just kidding. Or are we choosing to be all one color? And there's movies out there like, of course, The Giver was a good book and good movie that kind of showcased that, right? Where they all have white bikes and white shirts, and they're all supposed to live this life a certain way. And they even inject themselves to be normal. I don't know. And that's what's scary about Uranus and Taurus is, individuality kind of gets thrown to the corner. And you start to see Nazi uniforms, and you start to see the Gestapo, and you start to see, I want you, and everybody wearing American colors only. And you start to see the individuality start to float away because Uranus is at what we call in astrology fall position in Taurus. So that individuality gets lost. And that's another reason why I'm telling you right now, guess what? When Venus goes retrograde and it's going to be there, Uranus also goes back to Aries. It gives you one last shot to fucking come back into this world and be that bright, powerful color. Or be white. Or black, whatever one. People always, I don't know why I'm going to use this analogy, but it's a funny one. Might be even a little racist to my own race, but I'm a comedian, so I just fucking go there. People ask me, what are you? Because everybody thinks I'm Italian, everybody thinks I'm Spanish, Mexican, all that shit. I'm none of those. I'm Dutch Indonesian. On my mom's side, literally like from Holland, and Indonesia used to be a colony of the Dutch colony, and then it got taken over by Japan in World War II, and that's a whole long story. But on my dad's side, he's been here since the Mayflower and the Speedwell. So, and we were Quakers, and we came across the Oregon Trail, and da-da-da-da. The Palmer and me, right? It's like the original Palmer from fucking Scottish England and shit. But when people ask me, so what's your dad? I go, oh, white sock, right Reebok. And nobody gets it because of the whole kind of like, I'm a man, just living my life and doing it correctly. My dad is anything but that. He's a double Aquarius, and he's fucking crazy. And he's great. Where do you think I got all these jokes from all this life? But that I tell that to people because it's like we live in a world where people are becoming so generic. And the generic drug is never as good as the original. But we live in a world where the whole pharmacies, that's all they dish out. Oh, you got to order that shit. I don't want the generic. I want the real deal. Oh, yeah, they don't even make it. What? And that analogy is that way, and because I come from a white family, and I see a lot of white people that way. Just very. No, I don't want to feel today. Everything's fine. I've got everything together in my notebook right here in the center console. And did you see I've got the pen right there too? Thank you. It's hard being a comedian and an astrologer because it's kind of like, when you mix the two in spirituality, people don't know where to think, and some people leave going, I don't like this guy at all. But I feel that astrology and comedy are the ultimate ways of, and I think God is the biggest comedian in the world. I really do. I think God is just sitting here laughing at all of us the whole entire time as we are fucking up or as we're learning our lessons, and laughing because he always gets us or she always gets us through. Every time. And I think that's why God's laughing. Is like, why can't you just have faith that everything's going to be cool? Like, come on, I've already got it figured out. But I think that's what the problem is people are losing their individuality. And that's what scares me about Uranus and Taurus, is Uranus and Taurus was in 1933, and then what happened? World War II began, people lost individuality, it became about kind of a collective value system, right? Like we collectively are for the axis of evil, or we're collectively for the opposite team, or we are collectively for this. We kind of, as a world, all gravitate towards one thing that is of value, which of course one thing is money, but I think you're going to hear from all the astrologers for the next 8 years about money, cryptocurrency, money. Money is fucking money comes and money goes. Everything has value. Who wants this for $150 sat on by the Leo King, and I'll sign it for you, and I got it in Hollywood at a Hollywood shop. Actually, I'm taking $5,000 now. Anybody? That's how fast money can change. That's how fast you can find your worth in something. I can take this chair and make it fucking worth $5,000, and I bet you I could sell it. You know what? I'm not going to do it to you guys because I kind of want this chair for Chicago to sit in during the conference. But at it, I'm going to try and sell it for $5,000, and I'll sign it, and maybe somebody will buy it. That's how fast you can find self-worth in something. That's the lesson of Uranus and Taurus coming up. It's really not about cryptocurrency. It really isn't about money. It really is about your ability to be able to manifest out of nothing. Like, remember Schindler's List? When Schindler had no money and the war starts and the Jews are starting to get, set in the concentration camps, and he goes and meets a couple Jews in the back, and he gets into the car with them, and he makes a deal with the investment Jews and goes, listen, I'll get you guys a warehouse, but I need the money, and I'll give you guys freedom, and so, you guys can at least all be together, and I'll make all your families come together. I'm getting goosebumps because that movie is so fucking powerful. It's insane. And Schindler doesn't even know. He doesn't even know. All he's about is money the whole time. Money and wearing nice suits. But he knows he's friends with the Jews and he's friends with the Nazis. He has to go to all the Nazi tables, and he has to remember he gets them all drunk. I'm sorry, I use movie analogies all the time. But, it's like learning how to do it all with Uranus and Taurus. You just can't make money being like, I'm a construction worker, that's all I do. Well, you're going to be there forever. Uranus is the planet that says, don't you want to go higher up the ladder? Try something different. Try to manifest money in a different way. Taurus is also the sign of self-worth. If, you don't know how to and it doesn't matter, I'm using the example of manifesting a big thing. So yeah, you're going to need to talk to the Nazis and talk to the Jews and find a way to work that shit out and schmooze them and do this, and that's a hard job. But in your personal life, I'm sure there's things that other people can't do. I can't go to a construction site and be like, we can get some 2x4s from Home Depot, and I know a guy with a concrete truck, and we'll just kind of make something here. See, I'm not good at that. That's not my value system. But I guarantee you that construction worker doesn't even realize that they can turn whatever they've learned through their whole entire life into the greatest manifestation that they've ever wanted in their whole life. That's the powerful and awesomeness of Uranus coming into Taurus. It doesn't mean, no matter where you're at on the ladder of life, Uranus and Taurus teaches you that you can come from nothing and turn into everything. But you have to believe that in yourself. And God has already given you all the tools to do it. It's just whether or not you're going to just put them together on your little tool belt spiritually and walk to it and start using them. But everybody in this world is, I can't do that because I don't have enough degree or school or blah, 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 blah. Or I don't have enough money. it's like it's like people don't realize you can manifest whatever you want whenever you want, and that's what Uranus is going to teach. But it comes with the tools you've already built already. And if you're expecting to just find new tools out of nowhere, like, you're going to realize it was digging with your current tools that you found another tool. Because that's how Uranus works. It's moving forward, right? As it's pouring, it's not going backwards. It just starts moving forward, and then eventually I might get to her and be like, what's in your bag here? Oh, wait, can I have this? Yeah, I don't really use it. I hate it. Okay, great. Thank you. Keeps moving forward. He keeps gathering more tools and keeps using those tools and creating. Does that make sense? And because that transit's so important, how am I going to connect this back with relationships? Well, as you move forward in creating the life you've always wanted to create and manifest out of your life, well, you better do it with somebody who's going to be that you really want to be next to. Or that's not going to steal or take that fucking money either, right? Oh, I heard a lot of hums in here. I wanted to make one thing really clear about this next 5 years, because I know I can make it sound gnarly, because it is. But if astrology, when it's easy, it's boring. There are a lot of years where you'll look at somebody's chart or you'll look at events in life, and it was rather easy. Now, that's a great thing sometimes because it's like we get a break spiritually. But I want people to know that, yes, it sounds like work. It sounds like a lot of intense stuff going on. But it's those moments that make you reach the best moments of your life, if that makes sense. I was saying upstairs to the VIP people that I love challenges. I love facing fears because there's no better high than the backside of facing them. And I've done it all, you know what I mean? And nothing is a better high than when you like face your fear and you get through it and you're like, yes, I did it, you know? There's no better feeling in the world than reaching your greatest potential, whether that's spiritually or in any area of your consciousness. And what's coming is all of us to be able to reach that space. Another thing I wanted to say that I got some weird insights while I was walking around the room was the world that's coming up is so intense and so radical and so different that's going to be approaching that we've ever seen in our lives, and we're going to be witness to it, where most people kind of transition into it or don't really remember it. I mean, of course, we don't remember Model Ts and getting outside and I really wanted chitty chitty bang bang, but didn't happen this life, you know? But I think what it means is living your life fully in that world is the ultimate ride that's coming, right? Like, I don't want to say it's a waste because I don't want to sound like somebody that I know it all, because I don't. Like, I come from a place where who knows what's right and what's wrong and what's the best way to do things or anything. But I just am coming from my own personal opinion. I just feel like if the world's going to be this intense and so different, like, live it to your best. Live it to the highest. Live it all the way through. Face your fears. Face those hard choices to live in your real, authentic self. Because, you know, I wouldn't be sitting up here if I didn't do that. To be an astrologer for a living and make a really good living. Sorry. Is what I'm going to just say this, and then we'll go to QA. Wherever I go, people look at me. I'll be in my Corvette, or I'll be with my huge trailer, or whatever. Especially in the jet ski scene, because they're like, "What the fuck is Leo King?" You know, because jets, you know, any race or any racers or motorheads or anything, the last thing in the world they think when you walk up, it's going to be like, "Yo, I'm an astrologer, bro." It's like, yeah, no, it's like I'm pulling off a supercharger with a guy, you know, and being like, oh, God, I blew the clutch. Oh, gosh, you need to do this. And da-da-da-da. What do you do again? Oh, yeah, I'm an astrologer. Or the race director in one of the races, whenever he talks about, because all the racers talk, right? Like they go, what the fuck does that guy do? Leanna, come here. I want you to describe how Ross describes my job.
He's like, oh, he owns an app, and then he has all these beautiful women that pay to be on his app for him, and then that's how he makes money.
So it's funny because it's really a weird way to look at it, and I don't look at it that way. But it's like, you can do anything in this world, and the status quo of like, you know, I got to do it this way to make my life happen is over. It really is. That's what Uranus and Taurus is. It's like, you don't have to do it that way. And I'm just using, you know, my own personal experience with astrology as like, and especially being an astrologer, like taking it as like my passion, which is especially something really taboo, and making it me, because it would have been either this or porn star, but I had a choice because those are the two oldest jobs. For real. Or king, I already joined that crew. But you can do anything through this. You know, follow this new world and go into it with all of your. This is a little bit going into a lecture I already did, which you can watch on YouTube for free, called Age of Deception. But we have been brainwashed, literally, into feeling like we can't do really fully to the extent of some of our deepest desires in our life, you know, that it's impossible. And it's funny that all the things that people do that are always the most talked shit about, are always the one that are labeled as egomaniacs or narcissists or anything, because once you black label that, most people won't go. And how better else to control society than say, you're playing it safe, you're good to go. And if we're going to move into a new world, the more there's red tape, blacklisting things, or saying it's not the thing to do, I guarantee you it's usually behind that black tape that's like the Garden of Eden. Some people might think I'm a bad person or something, who knows, for saying that, but it's the truth. When you live in your real self fully and you finally break through the system of how to be, which I can honestly say I've been a living example of it with being a fucking astrologer. And like taking it to levels that never went before, right? With media and all that stuff, and like going on TV and being like, yeah, I'm a fucking astrologer. The moon's in Virgo today. I'm fucked. It's that when you change the system and you change the world and yourself with whatever it is that you do, that you're going to notice that God pays you in every way more. And I couldn't be more blessed to have you all in this room, because it's like, it's not me. It really is just the work, right? It is the just living in truth. And if you do that, you'll have blessings like this and beyond. Because it's a crazy living example. You are a reflection of what you're living. And I think that's the hardest part of the spiritual journey, is the reflection. Because for as you all, I've said it many times, I have been homeless in my car, peeing out of the side of the car and having the cops pull me over and be like, you are peeing in the street right now, dude. Like, and you're living in your car. You got to get the fuck out of here. like to living in my buddy's apartment who's smoking heroin and injecting heroin, and I'm living in the kitchen on the floor trying to make this astrology thing happen, and everybody's telling me that I'm an idiot. That, you know, it's those moments that test you. And in this universe, there is an edge, there is a boundary line that nobody in the dark world wants you to cross. Because if you cross it, it is an endless universe of unlimited potential. But if you do not cross that bridge, you are in the matrix.